Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever it is, wherever it is if you're watching, hopefully you are, because I'm going to go through some of the another aspect of the Middle Passage documents that may help you, and which are due on Monday in class, as well as the mercantilism cartoon. So let me get started with that and keep this hopefully fairly brief, although I do need to explain. I do want to go through another corroboration reliability example in addition to the one I did in class on Thursday. I'm going to hide my head. And again, the middle passage docs, questions, jigsaw due on Monday in class, and the same thing with the mercantilism cartoon questions. I'll start with the mercantilism cartoon questions. Those are here. Remember, I went through this in class on Thursday. I went through this class on Wednesday a little bit. I told you that the mercantilism is the idea you're trying to maintain a favorable balance of trade to get that gold and silver. In order to do that, you're going to use the colonies. You're going to use the colonies to supply that raw material, to supply them. So that's what you're thinking about as you're completing this particular slide for Monday. All right, back to the middle passage assignment 17, middle passage document questions. So remember, you've been working on, you can do them in groups some more if you'd like. You can get back to your and I have to be on first. You can go back to your groups if you'd like. That's entirely up to you. You can go back to your groups if you'd really like to do that. But if not, you can work on this on your own. And that's where you're going to be kind of left, even though you only have to do the document sourcing questions for your documents, A, C, D, B, E, D, depending on what you were assigned. All right, back to the corroboration. Again, how was the account similar? How was it different from other accounts? So one of the similar, I'm going to even do, I did A with you a little bit on Thursday before I set you off, and this is E. So again, the description by Equiano of getting whipped for not eating is supported by the doctor Falconbridge's account in document C, where he's talking about a very similar thing, where he's talking about how if they don't eat, he's talking about if they don't eat, then they get branded with a coal, or they get branded, and the coals of fire glowing hot, put in a shovel and near the lips and scorching them. They would get scorched if they did not eat. And then Gagliano talks about getting whipped for not eating. So this is again supported by the document C, by burning the slaves' tongue for not eating. If the slaves did not eat, they might die, and their captors would not profit from transporting them. That's the major reason why they whipped them for not eating. But then I said, Equiano's account, his account is different from the slave ship captain. His account is different from the slave ship captain of the slave ship captain in that Equiano recalls even the crew whipping white people for reasons that are unclear. The captain seems to set a tone of defending his actions and his crew. So by contrast, the captain in document B seems to set a tone of defending the actions of his crew. So if you look, at the captain in B, he's talking about defending the actions of his crew. He's talking about, that we endured twice the misery, and yet by their mortality, our voyages are ruined. In other words, they're losing money off them. So again, he's talking about the vulnerable to smallpox, and then sometimes it wreaks havoc and destruction. But we had 100 at a time, so we have lost the flux swept off. So he's talking about the flux, and only to be defeated by their mortality. He's talking about losing the slaves. But then he's talking about, we lost men as well. So he doesn't really give you the impression that he's going to, not take care of his men. So the Equiano gives an idea of, he's talking about how even white men were whipped. I feared I should be put to death. The white people looked and acted as such a savage manner. White men in particular were prevented the deck, flogged so unpurposely with a large rope that he died. So he's even talking about other white people getting whipped by members of their crew for reasons unknown. Either they were a traitor, either helping the slaves too much. Not really certain in this particular context. But again, it's a little bit of a contrast from the captain in the sense that you don't get the sense that the slave ship captain from the part you're reading would be turning against his men. The other piece, the reliability piece, again, the reliability piece, as you're looking at Equiano, it does say that he was born in South Carolina, but then there's strong evidence to corroborate his account, which is very this is very true. There's strong evidence to corroborate his account. So because there is strong evidence to corroborate his account, it's been generally accepted as true. And look at what corroborates his account. For example, a Falcon Bridge, the Anti-Slavery Society guy, corroborates his account. So I wrote here that consider the questions about where he was born, but also you wouldn't necessarily write this. This is just an example. You might need to write something more detailed. Consider about the questions about where he was born, but he's also writing this years later. So he's a child when he's writing this. Equiano is a child when he's writing, when he's experiencing this middle passage. He's years older when he's writing it. So it's known as a memoir, a look back. Okay, as a memoir, basically a look back from the perspective of a slave. And it even says as a young boy he was kidnapped and sold to European slave traders who took him to Virginia. And then he writes about this in 1789. So he's looking way back. So whether or not how he experienced this is to be it could be called into question because some of the details may be inaccurate when you're looking way back in a memoir. But his account is corroborated by so many others, including the slave ship doctor and other abolitionist societies, that it's hard to deny it, as we saw. So again, this is just another example of how we're comparing and contrasting and evaluating the reliability, the why or why not. You can mix up the documents, you can repeat the documents, but just don't compare them within each other. You need to compare them to other documents. Okay, that's the major idea. With the Mercantile Guide too, with the struggle for North America, this I call the GR guided reading form. So this is going to be posted, and this is not Doodle Tuesday. So this is strictly working ahead if you wish to work ahead. Okay, this is strictly if you wish to work ahead. So 3.2 is basically there's a form here, and it's 3.2 is that's what section is in the MI Open Book. It's a form. You can answer these as many times as you need to, the multiple choice to get them correct. What you're going to use is what you're going to use to read is there's a simple attachment. It's pretty straightforward with this. It's talking about not that one. Excuse me. I apologize. I knew I clicked the wrong one. This simple Google slide that basically has a quick reading on it, and you will look at this and talking about how the French and Dutch and English were competing for lands in North America, and how the French settled Canada, and the 7 Years' War, and a little bit of a review of some of the stuff you did in some of the material you covered in U.S., talking about where New France's population was, how they used the fur trapping and fishing and so on. Some of this story you've seen before, so I go through this rather quickly, but I want to be able to review it. So this is not Doodle Tuesday, but if you wanted to get ahead, you could. Okay, so hopefully this was worth your while if you're watching this, because I gave you another reliability corroboration guidance, if you will. And those are due on Monday in class along with the mercantilism cartoon questions. And keep in mind the Tulip Mania question as well. That's overdue. The Tulip Mania question, which is which was slide 11 on the notebook.